Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John with Murder by the Book, coming to you with another live virtual event. Tonight, we're excited. We've got 4 authors with us who are all published by Crooked Lane, and we're excited Sarah Warburton got in touch with us and kind of helped us get this set up. So we're really excited for this one. So to get us started this evening, I'm going to have each of our authors introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their newest book. While you guys are watching at home, if you have any questions for any of the authors, you can drop those in the Facebook comments, and I will be relaying those as they pop up. So Sarah, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about you and your newest release.
Hi, John. Thanks for hosting us. I lived for 11 years in Sugar Land, so Murder by the Book is one of my favorite independent bookstores. But 5 years ago, I moved to Virginia and wrote my debut thriller, which is Once Two Sisters. It's the story of 2 sisters. One goes missing, and the other one thinks for sure she's pulled some sort of Gone Girl mind trick, but that isn't the case. And so it's kind of a race to the finish from there. And I'm the oldest of 4 sisters, and so they're all fond of saying which one they think is based on them.
All right, and Roz, let's go with you next. Tell us a little bit about you and your new release.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Rosnay. I'm British and Australian and Canadian, but I'm currently sitting in Canada. And I have this book, Hurry Home, which came out in the summer. And to continue the sister theme, it is also about 2 sisters, or sisters that are estranged at the start of the novel. It's about something that happened in their past that only they know about, that kind of binds them together and destroys them in equal measure. And I also have sisters who want to know whether I'm really writing about them. Yeah.
All right, and Jody, how about you?
So yeah, hi, I'm joining you from Northern California, and I wrote a lot of young adult books before I entered into suspense, but my last 2 books have been suspense. The most recent one is called The Girls' Weekend, and it's about a girls' weekend, a college reunion, a bunch of women, 5 women that have not seen each other in a long time. There's a lot of tension simmering, and the hostess of the weekend goes missing, so they spend the rest of the time trying to figure out what happened, but a lot of things from the past become unearthed in that process.
All right, and next we have Callie White. Callie, can you tell us a little bit about you and your newest release?
Yes, thank you. Hi everyone. I'm Callie White. I am an Iowa-based author, and I'm also a creative writing professor for an MFA program. I have 3 novels, and I also write short stories and essays and articles, and I'm a regular contributor to the A&E Network Real Crime blog series, where I profile real kind of noteworthy crimes. And my 3rd novel, this is published under my maiden name of Callie White. My first 2 books were published under my married name. And this 3rd novel, The Monsters We Make, it's this one right here, is about, it's based on a real crime here in Des Moines, so it's crime fiction, about these 2 famous cases of these missing paper boys. And so the fictional novel is built around the real cases.
And so a lot of y'all's books, for all 4 of you, deal with kind of either family dynamics or really small kind of like close group dynamics. So when you're writing a thriller like that and you have to kind of get people into the thriller action so fast, how do y'all build kind of those dynamics quickly enough that you're going to get readers sucked in immediately? Is that something that you kind of know when you're starting the book, like this is what the dynamic's going to be, or is it something that you kind of figure out as you're writing? Anybody want to jump in first?
Well, I would like to talk a little bit about the slow burn, right? Because I mean, I'm often accused of that, and a lot of the books I love are accused of that. Like that. I think what's happening in suspense right now is that there isn't pressure to put a dead body on page 1. Or I mean, there's still that pressure for a certain kind of reader, but I don't think that's the only way to do it. But you're right. I mean, you have to, if people are reading suspense, they obviously want there to be a fair amount of actual suspense there. So for me, that like coming out of a different genre and not being, you know, a long-term sort of native of the suspense landscape, it's been a challenge figuring out like how much to push myself to keep that suspense from the very beginning, or do I have some time to sort of, you know, set up the world and set up the characters before things start happening. That's always been a challenge for me.
I'm like Jody. My first two books aren't suspense, thriller, mystery crime books. They're just general literary fiction. So switching to this genre and this story was, it was a challenge to better understand the pacing and like where to start laying the groundwork, using the crime itself to start building suspense, that feeling. That was a new area for me as well.
Kelly, you have a real ticking clock in yours, don't you? Because it's how many hours they've been missing, how many days they've been missing.
Yes, that sort of emerged, I think,
Yeah.
just naturally from, you know, a missing persons case. And I sort of had the real cases to help guide me, which was probably good in my first run at this. So
In some of the, I read these all very recently, so they're all fresh in my mind. But I know that yours is third person. Jody and Roz and I have a first person. And I found with mine, what really happened was having a character with issues and giving her something to complain about right out of the gate. She's like, you know, I have opinions. I know that, you know, Jody's main character doesn't want to go to the girls' weekend because of issues, and Roz's main character comes right out, or first introduced point of view character comes right out with, you know, this is who I am, this is my situation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of the psychological conflict comes from, or these strong personalities.
I think as well, working with families and sisters, it's such rich there's always going to be tension. Families is a great backdrop for thrillers, I think. And I think I was always just trying to work on that kind of belief that sisters, you do anything for your sister, you know, and I just try and take that belief and twist it on its head. So it becomes something a lot darker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the things that Jody brought up the point of kind of not everybody expects kind of the body on the first page anymore. One of the things we talk about a lot when I chat with cozy mystery authors is there tends to be kind of that school of you have that dead body at the end of the first chapter, or you kind of get to know that person within 70 or so pages and then they drop the dead body. So it's always interesting to me kind of where people fall in that. And then I guess with kind of this kind of suspense, you don't necessarily always have to have a dead body, you know, just kind of that family conflict and stuff like that leaves enough of those thriller elements. So my next question then, Jody and Callie, you guys talked a little bit about kind of being newer to the thriller world. So for all four of you, what drew you to wanting to write this kind of thriller?
Oh, that's a good question. I started this book, I didn't start out, I think, writing like a crime fiction or suspense. It started out a very different book using the cases, and I thought it was going to be more of like a domestic family drama. But what I found was the cases themselves and sort of the effects on the community took over the story. And so the story started to morph and change. And all of a sudden, the characters started, I realized they were hiding secrets of their own. And it took me a little while, like I was a little slow, I guess, to realize it myself, that I think this is maybe wanting to be a different kind of story. And once I figured that out and then just embraced it, the book started unfolding a lot, writing a lot faster, a lot more efficiently. Yeah, but it took me a while to realize that that's what was happening.
Yeah, I think for me, I felt like I had kind of reached the end of the road in young adult. And some of that has to do with kind of aging out of that genre. It became more of a struggle to feel authentic in that 16 or 17-year-old voice, you know, just, I mean, I teach, so I do have, you know, college age students that I'm working with, but it just felt more and more like a strain. And then I was seeing all this really amazing stuff happen, especially for women writers in the genre of suspense. And just seemed like, oh, like I could do that. I've never felt really proficient with plot. It's something that I've had to really teach myself. And so I felt a little intimidated by it. But there's, I realized that I was reading so much suspense that I must be really drawn to something there. So that was part of what kind of edged me into the genre. And now it feels so expansive. Like, it really feels like I could live here for a while, because there are so many nuances and subcategories and different ways to write it. Now it feels quite open to me.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I go next? Shall I answer that one next? Yeah, I don't know. I was expecting to write a funny book. I kind of stumbled into writing suspense, and I'm quite new. I've got 2 thrillers. This Hurry Home's the second, but with the first one, it was classed as grip lit, which I didn't even know what that was, even though I'd written it. And then with Hurry Home, I would think I was trying to do something a bit different, and it plays into what we're all talking about, which is how do you build suspense differently. Like, there aren't any murders or stalkers or psychopaths really in Hurry Home, which are the ingredients of a psychological thriller. So for me, Hurry Home was kind of a different, interesting book that took me a long time, because it wanted to be something a bit achier and a bit more subtle, I think, and maybe slower. So yeah, it's a different, it kind of bucks the genre as much as it's trying to sit in it.
So I don't think I've ever heard the term grip lit before. What does that mean?
I think it just means a page turner. I think that's really it in a nutshell.
Great.
Well, I'm newer than you, Roz. This is my first published, this debut. So I have 2 unpublished. The first one was a police procedural. I mean, it's straight up town and gown, and the second was some of the same characters, but there was no murder to solve. It was more public corruption, crime. So I already realized I was shifting genres. So when I went to start this one, I thought, I'm interested in relationships. I'm interested in sisters. That's what I want to write about. And as far as what a crime, it wasn't really about a crime. It was about this twisted relationship.
So let me find it. So Chuck in the questions asked, are all of your protagonists women? And do you think that thrillers are becoming more woman oriented? Let's go backwards this time. Let's start with Sarah on that one.
Well, yes, my characters are, my protagonists are women. I don't know in general. I do know that when I started working on this, the other books in the genre I was thinking of also had female protagonists. So I don't know if thrillers in general are. I think there may be a tendency for psychological thrillers to be more, or what they're calling domestic thriller, which then you have to wonder if that's a whole gendered genre. But I think it's what's happening right now in that genre.
And how about you, Roz?
I think it's definitely female dominated in psychological thrillers. I think are dominated in terms of who's writing them. There's more women than men, and I've written 2 and they are female dominated, but I've just handed in a 3rd one, and the central protagonist is a man, which was quite interesting to take on. I actually really enjoyed that, writing first person as a man.
And Jody?
So I have 2 suspense novels. One of them the first one was called Watch Me. And that, well, first, yes, The Girls' Weekend is from a woman's perspective, but Watch Me was split between a male character and a female character. And I thought at first that the male character was going to be just a kind of bit part, like that there wouldn't be a lot of chapters from his perspective. And then I became totally fascinated with him and really enjoyed getting into that voice. So, I mean, I don't think we should limit ourselves just based on our own life experiences. And that entire experience completely surprised me. I mean, he's also really psychotic, so I don't know, maybe that made him more interesting to me. But yeah, I think there's a lot of, I feel like, Gone Girl really kind of opened a lot of doors for women in suspense, and suddenly we realized there's all this like anger and simmering tensions that women experience too, and we write about it, I think, a little differently than most men do. So you know, that was part of what excited me about the landscape right now, is that there's a lot of really great stuff happening in the genre in general.
And how about you, Callie?
So my first two books were, the point of view characters were female. The Monsters We Make it rotates between 3 point of views. So it's a male character, he's a cop. Then there's a teenage girl and then a young boy. So this was very different from anything I'd ever done in the past. And the new book I'm working on is the protagonist, the point of view character is a male, a priest. So I still love female centered stories though, even though the new one I'm working on is the main character is male. And I do think female perspectives, I think writers have found they do work well in like psychological thrillers and suspense, because I think so often women are questioned more than men, like their truth or what they're saying is happening, and it's a lot easier to cast doubt on female characters, I think, in many ways than it can be for male characters, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I see lots of heads nodding. So yeah, definitely. Elisa asks, what is the most rewarding aspect or element of your writing process? Let's start with Callie this time.
Oh, my favorite part of is the revision process. I hate first drafts. I think they're very painful, and my first drafts are slow and terrible. And typically I don't really even know what the story is until it's done, until I get through first draft. And it's the revision process where I start to figure out and see the book that it's going to become start to emerge. That's my favorite part. It's kind of like the pieces finally start coming together. Yeah.
How about you, Jody?
I'm the exact opposite.
I know, everyone's different.
I mean, I think for me, I've done a lot of asking myself questions about writing and what it provides for me, and why I love it, and why I've, during COVID, I've been like really kind of manic and compulsive about writing, like clinging to some sense of meaning, I guess. So for me, the best moments of writing are when I can fully lose myself in it. And that usually happens more for me in that first draft, because it's springing out of nothing and I'm just fully in the scene. Whereas when I'm editing or revising, it's like I'm always thinking about what's wrong with the book. And that's really hard on me. So yeah, I'm pretty much the opposite.
Yeah.
And how about you, Sarah?
I would say it's almost always whichever I'm not doing at the current moment. So this one, I wrote the first draft doing, big sprints, and it was exciting until I looked at what I'd written, and then I'm like, this is nowhere near what I thought I had in my head. So I'm revising now, and I do like the idea that I'm getting closer to what my ideal was. But it is true, it's less in flow often, and it's a lot more stop and start.
And Roz?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everybody. So I'm thinking that maybe all the things are my favorite. I like I like being able to escape into the world in my head, especially at the moment when we've all needed that a bit, I think. But equally, I find first drafts really terrifying, and like the shelter of having that kind of collaborative editor alongside where you feel you've got a scaffold and it's much safer. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, I mean, it's always nice to get good feedback from readers and to feel that they're bringing something to the story that you didn't even know that you had, that they bring that you didn't bring. And then you kind of are having a conversation together. And I like that about it as well.
So that sort of dovetails into Bryce's question. So we'll start with you this time, Roz. So he wants to know, do you have editors that, so basically he's asking kind of what your relationship is with an editor. He says specifically, do you find that they kind of push you to turn stories in a direction that's more marketable? Or is it something that they kind of work with you to kind of bring out what's naturally happening in the book? So let's start with Roz this time.
I think that the thing about my books are that they are edited in Canada first, because my primary publisher's son issues to Canada, and I had two editors, so it was a really big conversation because we're all saying kind of different things. But I do think with both books, I'm quite edit heavy, and they have like almost sliced half. If it were like a pantomime horse, they've like lopped off the entire back end, and we've written it again both times. So I think that I've had to learn how to just kind of let go of stuff and trust, as a fairly new writer, to trust that they know exactly what's happening. I've just handed in my third book, and that didn't happen, which was really weird. Like the pantomime horse is entire, still there. So that something's changing, but I do think that I'm reliant on my editors. Yeah, I do.
So those chops and stuff that happen, is that things that maybe potentially the story's not, is it just something that's not working in the story, or is it something that they pick up and think like, no, I think it's going this direction, and you think it's going this direction?
I think what it is that I don't really know the direction it's going. I don't really have any idea what I'm doing. No, I think that I find it difficult to write the second half of books. Like I get really overexcited and the endings get ludicrous. So I think that they kind of pull me back and kind of keep me on track. I tend to write myself off cliffs, so they stop that and kind of pull me back again.
How about you, Sarah?
I wouldn't say that I've had input as far as making something more marketable or changing the genre. It generally has been about the book as it is and things that are working or not working. I know with Once Two Sisters, there was a character who showed up at the 2/3 mark and then appeared in every single scene all the way to the end for no apparent reason. So she's gone in the book. You won't see her there. And that was my big edit, was just like, why is this person here? Delete her and fill that in with people who should be there.
And Callie, how about you?
I think I get a lot of direction from my agent. She's a pretty hands-on agent. So, when I turned in this manuscript to her, she gave me quite a bit of direction to help shape it, and help when I said, I think I envision this as, it's kind of crime. It's a little more crime fiction, maybe with a little mystery suspense. And she helped me shape a little bit of that vision that I had. And then when I worked with the editor, I had very similar experiences to Roz and Sarah, that it was more like, you have 4 point of view characters, this fourth, I don't think we need her. I don't think she's helping move the story along. I think some of her chapters are a little repetitive. I think you can rewrite those from another point of view character and it'll streamline. It was more stuff like that versus like what they said with marketability discussions or things like that. Yeah.
And how about you, Jody? Anything to throw in there?
Well, I know from teaching creative writing, I would get questions from my students frequently about editors, and I often got the impression that they thought of editors as kind of the big bad wolf who's going to try to rob you of your creative force. I have not found that to be even remotely true. And it's like just such an amazing thing to have this person who really cares about your book and these things that you could never, ever see. Where I have found in the process that marketing tends to step in is with cover and titles. And almost every book I've ever written, there's been a discussion, usually pretty late in the game, about the title and whether it's really working or not. Mm-hmm. And that, I've fought marketing on it before, and I've gone with their suggestions before. I've done both, depending on how strongly I feel about the title. But that's more where I think marketability comes in a big way.
I had the same experience. Marketing stepped in about the title. The original title I had, they thought was maybe too pastoral or misleading. And so we ended up coming up with a more genre fitting title. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's usually the discussion that I've had too, where it's like, I think as writers, we tend to kind of be drawn to the titles that are more evocative and sort of poetic, and they just sort of roll off the tongue beautifully. But marketing is usually like, what is it? Tell us what the is. My book was called Deception Pass, and then we changed it to The Girls' Weekend, which is just more descriptive about what it is, what happens there.
I had that with the cover. I was picturing in my head like an ominous landscape. And they were like, no, it has sisters, so we will put faces on the front because that's what sells. And I love the cover now, but it's why I'm not in marketing. I would never in a million years have come up with it on my own.
Yeah.
It's not what was in my head.
How about you, Roz, as far as like titles, covers? I mean, did you have to go to the mat for titles or covers or anything with either of the books?
Our little secret was named by my agent. I handed it in as something that completely gave everything away. So they had to change that. And then Hurry Home, I didn't name. I'm so bad at titles because I can't narrow it down to the tiniest kernel of, okay, this is what it should be called. So Hurry Home is the name of it's within the book, and my editor found that. She pulled that out. She said, there's your title, and it fits. But I just tried to name one. I handed in my third one and called it something, and it got vetoed. So I'm back to not trying anymore.
So in that process of kind of coming up with a title, coming up with a cover, where do you guys kind of draw the line as far as like picking your battles? Like maybe it's a title that you don't think works, or maybe it's a cover that you didn't necessarily envision. Is it kind of a matter of picking battles? Like maybe you're thinking like, okay, well, this isn't as important to me, so I'll give a little bit on this if there's something else. Does anybody have any kind of thoughts on that?
I tend to defer to people that really know the market. I don't feel like I know more than them, so I'm willing to be guided on it. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a cover I've ever really disliked though, so I don't know how that would go.
I'm like Roz. Even though they didn't like I changed the title of this one, I still came up with the second title that they approved. I totally defer to them for cover art. And they sent one mock-up and I loved it. And my previous books, I had a pretty similar experience. I don't have an eye for that kind of stuff. So, and I'm lucky. I haven't hated a cover where I've had to go to battle over it. So I guess I'm lucky in that respect.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would say that my skill set is not cover design and marketing, and I have no idea. So yeah, I've been very pleased with everything that they've done. I'm like, you guys know.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes a small tweak can really make a big difference, Mm-hmm. On the cover of Watch Me, there was this kind of ominous figure. It wasn't the main image on the cover, but there was a sort of ominous figure representing the antagonist. And my agent and I were both like, is it just me, or does he look kind of grumpy? Him skinnier, and we're like, now he looks like an alien. So I actually sent them an image of what I wanted them to use, and they bought the image and used it. So
Nice.
sometimes it's like a font change, but that's usually where I consult with my agency. Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I just being weird, or do you see this too? And it's really nice to have an agent in your corner, so it's not just you being difficult. I think there's a big fear of being a difficult author.
Having an agent isn't to go to bat for you is everything.
And they usually prefer it that you send your ask through them. Yeah.
It's always interesting to me kind of how many people have kind of their hands in things like titles and covers. It used to be when Borders and Barnes & Noble were around. Now Barnes & Noble has so much power. Like if the buyer at Barnes & Noble doesn't like a cover or a title, they can go to the publisher and say like, we're not going to carry this because it doesn't fit, blah, blah, blah. And it used to be, well, if Barnes & Noble didn't carry it, then like Borders would potentially, if they liked it there. So it's interesting to me. We have Victoria Laurie, who's a good friend of the store. She had a young adult book that a buyer at a chain didn't like the cover. So they literally had already sent out galleys of it and actually had to change the title of the book. So they sent out galleys with like stickers on it that were like, no, this is the new title now. So it's always interesting to me just kind of how much it's kind of a collaborative thing between so many different people that, people generally just think, oh, you're the author. So of course you get to do kind of all of the stuff. And that's generally not how it works.
I also experienced an identical cover with another author.
Oh.
My second book, they bought a stock. It was a photo from the Library of Congress. It was one of the old Dorothea Lange photos because the book was set in the 40s and 50s. And as it turned out, another publisher, another author had purchased the rights to the exact same photo, which is totally legal and happens. And our books came out within a month of each other by total chance. And so it was the exact same picture. The design was a little different, like the coloring and obviously the font and the titles were different. But as soon as the two covers were sort of out, Twitter started tagging us together saying, oh, hey, Callie, hey, did you guys know you have identical covers? It got kind of awkward. So we finally had to email each other and say, well, this is weird. Let's meet. I read your book. It's great. What else can you say? It happens. Sometimes stock photos appear in the same covers. It just happens.
So in that case, did they change the cover for the paperback when it came out?
Mine was already trade paperback,
Okay.
and so was hers. So no, they stayed.
So Chrissy wants to know, she is curious about what your research process is like. Let's start with Jody. Can you talk a little bit about research?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think most writers know that research can be a huge procrastination tool. So I'm a little bit careful about it. I mostly do research on kind of a need to know basis. I mean, some things obviously you really need to, I'm always reading books at the same time that somehow help what I'm working on or give me background. I'm working on something that involves a cult right now, so I'm reading everything I can about cults. So that's going on in the background, but I also am really, we live in an era where like the little details that you need to know, oftentimes you can just dig right into the internet and find that tiny little piece that you need. So that's kind of amazing, but I wouldn't call myself a research heavy writer in general.
How about you, Callie?
Yeah, I tend to do a lot of research, especially for this one, because I was using real cases as the framework. Originally, I had written it with the real cases. I eventually fictionalized the two main Paperboy cases, but I kept many of the real facts from the cases because they had such a big historical significance in the landscape of child abduction and how child abduction cases are investigated today. A lot of that had to do with those two cases here in Des Moines. So I spent months, almost a full summer, trying to get reacquainted with the cases, even though I had grown up with them. And I did a lot of interviews. I read hundreds of archived articles on the original cases and like Jody said, deep dives in the internet, which maybe at times was also procrastinating from writing. I fully admit that. I have to reel research in, otherwise I'll never write. I'll just keep researching. So it's something I know about myself that I have to keep in check. Yeah.
And how about you, Sarah?
Well, my favorite research is when I can call somebody and just ask them a lot of questions and take notes. But for this book, most of what I was doing was the kind of research where you're reading public information acts from Congress, reading all these kind of long government things. And then I did a lot of location scouting online, which is a lot of fun. I'd look up about 20 different things and then design my own and put it where I needed it to be.
And how about you, Roz?
Yeah, I think that what I tend to do is, of the thrillers that I've written, a lot of it is actually stuff I've lived. So there's a huge chunk of my first thriller that happens in Oxford in England, and I lived there and went to school there. And so it was fairly reliable research. And then with this one, the big secret that the sisters are hiding is something that happened, not to me, but something that happened when I was staying on my grandfather's farm. It happens like a really bad thing happened, and I stored it in my brain, and I was 10 and it stayed with me. And so I think that I tend to use stuff that I know because it happened. And also all the kind of child protection stuff in this latest book I had to get right. But my job is that I work in child protection as a day job. So I tend to just kind of stay fairly close to things that so far that I know a little bit about. And plus I managed to make some friends. I've got a really good friend who's a coroner, and she's the best.
So a big component of kind of these type of thrillers and domestic suspense is kind of the twist. Like you said, kind of like the thing that happens to the sisters. There's kind of that moment that kind of readers have come to expect for domestic thrillers. So how do you write or plot a novel that might potentially have a twist in it when you know that readers are kind of aware that one is going to come and might be looking for it? Let's start with you, Roz.
So that's so difficult. That's the big thing, isn't it? Because you have to write a twist that when the reader gets there, they can feel like they've been kind of carrying it in their pocket unknowingly all the way through. So that is pretty difficult to do because readers are so savvy. I think that how do I do that? I think what I do is just kind of try and leave a trail for myself in an early draft, and then kind of take out 7 out of the 10 breadcrumbs I left, so that it's a lot harder for them than it ever was for me. But I do think that first drafts are about telling yourself what the twist is, like you're writing it to figure it out. But I mean, twists are totally necessary, and I don't know the formula for them, just that they kind of emerge if you're true to your character. I think they kind of emerge for you, but the trick is hiding it, I think.
How about you, Sarah?
I completely agree with Roz. Something I'm always saying is that the answer to what happens in the end of the book is always somewhere in the beginning of the book. And so when I'm writing along, sometimes the twist doesn't even seem that twisty to me until I go back over the first draft, and I'm like, I see where if I emphasize this a little, it'll be a bigger surprise. And I'm never really sure if it's going to work until I run it past some people who don't already know, because when you've written it, you're not surprised.
And how about you, Callie?
So the Monsters We Make isn't really a thriller. It's more just crime fiction, maybe with a little bit of mystery. And like the twisted thrillers, I don't know how writers do that either. I was hoping maybe they would have more answers here in this group, because I read Jody, Roz, and Sarah's books over the last 2 weeks, and I'm one of those readers. I'm hook, line, and sinker. I get to the end and I'm like, I did not see that coming. I think is an indication I'm probably not a thriller writer at heart either. So I've never tried to write a twist ending before. Not my wheelhouse.
And Jody?
Well, it's funny timing, because I was just ranting to a friend about this morning, but I feel like the genre as a whole is moving so far towards the twisty directions that, like, 5 of the 6 books that I've read recently, not present, it's like, yeah, that's a twist and it's insane. Like, it makes no sense. A professor used to say you have to have retrospective inevitability, right? Like, you have to be able to look back and see that, oh yeah, that makes so much sense, similar to what Roz was saying. So I would love to be a master of the twist, but I think it has to be organic. I don't think we can't force it just because that's what readers want. I as a reader, I feel it when it's forced, and I want.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things to encounter is when you spent that much time kind of reading a book and then you get to the end and like the twist comes completely out of left field and you're like, it doesn't feel earned. I also am not like Callie. I also don't try to figure out the twists when I'm reading, because I'm kind of along for the ride, and when it happens, I love that moment where you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, of course, this, of course, this was the twist. But I love that. So Callie mentioned that she doesn't read to figure them out. Does anybody else read to figure them out, or are y'all just along for the ride?
I'm always trying to figure them out. I'm the worst reader, probably. I'm like, aha, I've got it. But, I rarely do, but I am always looking.
I'm somewhere in the middle for sure. Like, I'm caught up into it, but if I have to put that book down for even a minute, I'll be thinking about it when I'm not reading it, and that's when I'm working on it.
And how about you, Jody?
Well, as a reader, it's not important to me overall. I mean, of course, I want to be surprised. Everyone wants to be surprised, and I don't want any book that I read or write to be predictable. But it's really about the characterizations for me and the atmosphere, the setting, there's so much more that goes above the twist on my priority list as a reader.
So Tricia wants to know, is there a character point of view that you've read but haven't written that you're intrigued to try in one of your own novels?
I would love to write a true, fully omniscient novel, like with not a focused point of view. It's the, godlike. It's a little out of fashion. Not many writers today use full omniscient and do it really well. Like Celeste Ng, I think, is one of the reigning full omniscient, like Little Fires Everywhere and Everything I Never Told You. And she even builds in a tiny bit of mystery through those stories and does it so seamlessly. And it's such a hard point of view. I would love to be able to do it, but man, you really got to know how to handle it. That point of view can get out of control very quickly.
Anybody else?
I have always written first person, and usually first person present tense. But even third person feels a little bit intimidating to me. I mean, I have tried it, but it never feels natural to me. So, that would be an interesting challenge. But I agree with Callie that the omniscient completely freaks me out. I have no idea. It seems like I can't be God. I can't do everything the way that omniscient POV does. But I so admire it when it's done well.
And so present company excluded, so you can't mention somebody else's books that's on the panel. What have y'all read recently that you've loved? And when you read, do you read in the crime thriller genre, outside of it, kind of all over the place? Let's start with Roz.
I've just begun a book that I know I'm going to love because I love the first 50 pages, and that is The Vanishing Half. Britt
Bennett?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm really loving that book. And the one that I loved before that, I just read Necessary People, Anna Petoniak, which I thought was a really good thriller. Yeah.
And so do you tend to gravitate more towards thrillers, or are you kind of across the board?
I try to read, I do read a lot of thrillers because I'm just I still feel like probably everyone still feels like they're still learning and still trying to see what everyone else is doing. And I love it when I find one that I can really get my teeth into. Yeah. I'm a big Lisa Jewell fan as well.
Yeah, her new one, Invisible Girl, is so good.
Loved it. Yeah.
How about you, Sarah?
Well, I'm in, some might say, too many book clubs, and the one for tomorrow night that we just finished is Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, and I thought it was fantastic. I just really, really liked it. And then Wednesday nights was also good. It was The Cellist of Sarajevo. But then, yes, I do read a fair number of crime. I have Tana French's by my bed ready to go once I hit a moment.
And how about you, Callie?
One of my favorite books that I just read in the last several months was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. I loved that book. I tend to read across all genres, in part for my teaching. I teach some memoir, I teach a lot of nonfiction, and I have a lot of my students are across all genres. So I read a little bit of everything. And I do read a lot of crime, mystery, suspense, but I tend to love to listen to them on audiobooks. For some reason, I burn through a lot of suspense books on audio. Yeah.
Yeah, McKenna, the store owner, has recently kind of discovered the love of audio, just kind of with pandemic, everything going on, kind of reinventing how to sell books in the middle of all of this. When focus was an issue with reading it, she's been really able to kind of, like you said, kind of inhale stuff through audio, which she's really kind of come to love. Yeah. And how about you, Jody?
I am also a rabid audiophile. I love audiobooks. Before audiobooks were readily available, I was really fascinated with 40s radio drama. Like I used to listen to these old cassette tapes from the library of 40s radio drama, or also other eras, but mostly the 40s. So I think part of that is when you teach and when you write, there is something so nurturing about being told a story, like just sitting back and letting them take you away. It's just really like a kind of therapy for me. I also have a ton of French's Newest on my saving it like a good wine. And I just finished Ruth Ware's One by One, which was delightful.
I bet that was good.
Yeah, it's next in my stack. We did an event a week or two ago where Ruth interviewed Lisa Jewell about her new book, which we'll be putting up on the store's YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks. And everybody else at the stores loved Ruth's too. I meant to get to it when I was on vacation, and it didn't happen. So kind of, we mentioned kind of pandemic focus, all of that stuff. What has it been like to publish a book in the middle of this? Were there conversations with anybody about potentially changing release dates or anything like that? Obviously, we can't do in-store events, so we've been doing virtual stuff, but what has the publishing and the pandemic experience been like for y'all? Let's start with Jody.
So I did get my pub date was changed. It was set for June, and the audiobook came out in June, which was nice, but the actual hardcover didn't come out until August. And I was okay with that. It gave me a lot more time to kind of get my ducks in a row for publicity. And, obviously it's not ideal. I mean, this kind of event though is something that's kind of a perk where, I couldn't get to Houston probably to be there live. So this is actually, I'm doing a lot of events like this and really kind of enjoying it. I mean, I miss obviously the heady rush of actually being in a room with your readers. That's always the most exciting, but it's also more nerve-wracking than this, I think, in a lot of ways. And just, the whole thing of like, am I going to have a reading and it's just going to be my mother there, which has happened.
How about you, Callie?
So Jody and I think, have had the same publication date. I had a June date, it got bumped, and both of our books came out on August 11th, the same day with Crooked Lane. And I was like Jody, it was fine. It didn't seem like that big of a deal to get the book pushed, the audiobook, same case, still released in June. What I ran into was on August 10th, the day before my book released, the Midwest got hit by this freak storm called a derecho, which is like the equivalent of a land hurricane. And it ripped through almost the entire state of Iowa, and it demolished almost this huge swath of the state. I was in the path of it. And so we lost power and internet for 5 days. So I had no power, no internet the day the book launched. And it's a pandemic and everything's shut down. So you're completely reliant on the internet and social media. And my hands were completely tied. It was so stressful, but I got through it. I mean, all kinds of things go wrong with publishing. You just can't predict. You just have to try and roll with it the best you can. And the virtual, having virtual events, like Jody said, it has afforded me opportunities to do joint events with authors I would have never been able to do events with before, and chat and talk about their books in conjunction with mine, which is a real unexpected bonus of doing events this way. Yeah,
we're really excited to see kind of once the world starts to kind of right itself a little bit and we can actually do in-store stuff, how we can still be able to do stuff like this and still be able to reach writers. Because like you said, it's easier to throw a panel together and we can have a 4-view chat. Like there's no way we would have gotten Lisa Jewell and Ruth Ware both in the store at the same time with pub dates that far apart. So it's been really fun to get to kind of play and experiment and do it this way. So we're excited to see what we can do with this to kind of supplement when we have in-store stuff too. And how about you, Sarah? I know, everybody else up on the panel has had previous releases. So you published a debut in the middle of all of this. What has that been like for you?
Well, like everyone so far, I did have my pub date moved. It was originally in August and it was moved to September. And actually my kids' school was also moved from August to September. So their first day of special hybrid school was the day my book came out. So it was only one in a big day full of things going on. I'd say it was one of those things where it wasn't the way I had imagined it, but I think that you could say that about pretty much any stage of the publishing process. And having virtual events really has made all the difference. And it is one of those things. I mean, just as you couldn't have authors from so many different places at one event, at my virtual launch party, I was able to have friends from all over. Family from, I have sisters in California, Rhode Island, and Virginia, and they were all there. And that's something that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So.
Yeah, it's been a nice side effect too. You know, about a third of what we do at Murder by the Book is mail order business because of signed books, because of all the signing. So, you know, we have a lot of customers who a third of them live across the country and have never been able to be in the store to get to see an event. So it's been nice for them to kind of get to see those as well, and what we get to do too. How about
I like
you,
the
Roz?
commute to these events.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as what everyone's saying. You can get to meet and chat with people that you probably could never organize this many panels. I mean, I must have talked with about 50 people since July when Hurry Home came out. And it's nice to be able to wear, you know, like pajama pants through. That's what's happening now. No, not but it could be. So yeah, that I like that as well, that you can be kind of it is more relaxing. You're in the, apart from the problem I have found with Zoom is that my dog barks quite a lot. So that's been embarrassing at times.
Yeah, my cats I think they've made appearances in almost every interview that I've done. And if they don't, people on the sources were like, there are no cats this time. I'm like, oh, the one time that they've been quiet. But yeah, it's been great. We've been really lucky to have publicists help us get kind of up to speed to be able to do these, and also other bookstores have been really great about kind of helping other bookstores figure out, like, hey, this format works for us, this platform works for us. So it's been a really great way to still kind of get that sense of community when the bookstore has been closed and we haven't been able to have readers and authors in the stores. I did wanted to mentioning readers in the store. If you guys are watching on Facebook, we just announced last week that Murder by the Book is finally officially reopening for customers to come in and browse. We've been doing curbside pickup and shopping by appointments, but starting on Saturday, October 31st, we thought Halloween would be the perfect day to fling the doors open again. So starting at 10 on Halloween, we'll be open again, limiting it to 6 people in the store at a time. Of course, we'll preach at the door, some hand sanitizer, masks will be required, but you'll be able to come in and shop. And we'll be announcing probably in the next week or two if you're still not quite ready to come in. Of course, we're still doing curbside pickup, but we'll also be doing some appointments on Sundays throughout the holidays for people who want to be able to come in and shop, but may not want to do it with other people out in the store. So guys, keep an eye on Facebook for more announcements on that. So before we head out this evening, I know everybody has just released something recently. I always feel bad asking people what they're doing next when you've just spent all of this time on this one book and we're promoting it. But can you guys tell us a little bit about what your next projects might be and when we might get to see those? Let's start with Roz this time.
Yeah, I've got a third thriller. So it's coming out, I think it'll be out in the summer of next year. It's provisionally called The Hunted, which I didn't name because I can't name things. And it's about a couple who go abroad and they make best friends with another couple on, you know, because that's what you do when you're on vacation. And then couple A can't get rid of couple B. And it turns out, of course, that couple B are not who they seem. So yeah, hopefully that'll be out next summer.
Awesome. And Sarah?
I'm also working on another thriller, currently called, according to the publisher, You Never Can Tell. And it is very loosely based on the way the Moors murderers were caught. So it's a couple, they're friends with their neighbors, and they have no idea who their neighbors really are. So that's the thrill.
And Callie?
I'm working on another novel. It's a crime mystery novel, again, involving a priest and a murder involving a previous member of the parish, and it's loosely based on a real priest I met, and then another sort of high-profile murder case here in Iowa. Yeah, so another kind of fictionalized true crime.
And Jody?
I'm extremely superstitious about talking about works in progress. but a psychological suspense novel set in academia, I seem to be kind of gravitating towards.
So if you guys joined us late, you will be able to rewatch the video once we've finished. Facebook will archive it. We'll also get it uploaded to the store's YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So that way, if you have friends or family that are on Facebook or not on Facebook and they still want to watch, they'll be able to watch it on YouTube. And starting in November, we'll be transitioning our author events to YouTube instead of Facebook, and we'll have more info about that in the store's newsletter. But to recap, we have been talking with Sarah Warburton, whose book Once Two Sisters is out now. Roz Nay's Hurry Home, which is also available. Callie White has been talking about her book, The Monsters We Make. And Jody Gehrman has been talking about the Girls Weekend. We have copies of all of them in the store. So you can visit us at murderbooks.com to order. Give us a shout on the phone, shoot us an email. We can get those sent out to you. We're still offering free media mail on all orders over $50. Sarah, thank you so much for shooting me an email to get all of this set up. This has been really fantastic. Everybody, thank you for spending some time with us this evening, and y'all take care, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.